We have 22 participants, and that's pretty good for a Zoom meeting. So I want to thank every one of the people for being here. And I'm going to ask Chris if you will start your walk-up music, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mora.
And if everyone will mute until they're ready to speak, that would help us all. Thank you.
Here, I'll take this down.
All done. Yep, all done.
Within a week, travel plans were changed, events were canceled, and our favorite small businesses were forced to close or dramatically adapt.
But I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Ooh, mountain. We gon' walk it out.
In those unprecedented times, our incredible community chose to rise up, lend a hand, and stand strong together each day, like we had previously done for the past 2 centuries.
Our eyes are afraid, I rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. And I rise up, I like the waves, I rise up, in spite of the ache, I rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate y'all doing it. Thanks, sir. Have a good day.
Immersed in the fear, tragedy, and worry, we found pieces of hope.
The silence is quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we would take the world to its feet. Ooh, oh, bring it to its feet. Ooh, mountain.
While we've come so far already, the pages of tomorrow are still unwritten, and we get to determine the narrative. As a community, let's embrace our responsibility to our neighbors so that at the end of this story, we can be proud of the way it is written.
You can't see us. I think.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium the president of the Rotary Club of Jasper, Steve Lawrence.
Can't wait to get back to those days when we can do that. But thank you so much. And Max, if you will say a devotion for us today.
Yes, sir. Let's pray. Our Father, we give you thanks for the gift of life and our community and for the world and for this country. We thank you for all the first line responders and for all that they have done, are doing, will do to help keep us safe. And Lord, I pray that we would have wisdom ourselves and how we conduct ourselves and the wearing of masks and being distant and doing everything we can to protect ourselves and others. And we thank you that we've learned a great lesson that all of us are essential. Everybody is essential, that it takes us all to care for one another. Give us your grace and peace as we serve our world and community as Rotarians. And everybody said, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Max. And Josh Tippins, would you say our pledge today for us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the flag.
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I don't see that that Don Martin is on our list today. Regina, I think he's somewhere else. Is that correct?
Actually, I'm on the call. I've just got my picture muted because I'm feeding my face. I'm going straight from one meeting to another.
Oh, okay. Well, while you're here and we had you for a moment, then tell us about the meeting that we had on Saturday and your perception of how that went.
Okay, thanks. I was really happy with the event. We had about 240 folks attend on Saturday morning, which is about twice as many as we had physically present at PETS last year. Our training contact hours at the end of the day on Saturday were equal to the previous year. And then we've had 3 hours of training on Monday and Tuesday nights, and we still got 3 tonight and 2 tomorrow. So we will somewhere between 2.5 and 3 times the number of training contact hours getting information to Rotarians, and I take that as a real positive. I think overall the training sessions, I haven't been in every one for the entire time, but I've been in most of them, and the training's been better than we've had in previous years. And for all of you, the training's being recorded, and the links to the first 5 or 6 classes are already on the district website. Just go and listen to them at your leisure for the different sessions that you might be interested in. And
Thank you so much, Don. And while we have Gina Penley with us today, she was not here last week, and I want to recognize her for her contribution of the $14,000 off of Mardi Gras that was brought to our club as our part of that. And we're all going to do this so that you can look, Gina.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
I was very surprised or glad at the numbers too. They were very good. So it was a good event. I think we'll do it again next year. What do you think?
I hope that we can attend such an event. I look forward to it.
Me too. Thanks.
Our program today is our editor of the Pickens County Progress, Mr. Dan Poole, and Dan is known to all of us. We really look forward to what he will have to tell us in general about what's going on in our county that he sees. And then Dan has also invited us afterwards to ask him any questions, so he'll take a Q&A at the end of it. So at this time, it is my great pleasure to present to you Mr. Dan Poole.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks for y'all having me. I don't know that I have a lot of insight into anything that's not pretty much out there. Obviously, the big things we've got going on is a good local election, a lot of state offices. We've got, I got the paper here for this week. You'll see a couple of our bigger stories we got responses from the candidates for commission chair and tax commissioner. We've got a sample ballot, which comes in handy because there are quite a few statewide races on the ballot and stuff that you may, and I don't know that necessarily is because of the coronavirus, but we really haven't seen a lot of our state or our congressional candidates here. In fact, we really haven't seen any of them. I guess it's hard to put on any type of campaign events, but I'll hold it up real quick if you haven't seen it. It's in the B section, a sample ballot that lists where you vote. And just, I know probably people in the district know this, but I always point this out. dueling elections, so it's always a problem. We are a split county. We have different congressmen in the east part of our county and in the west, and we have different state senators in the east and the west. So probably worthwhile to take a look before you go to vote. Early voting is underway. It is, I know, got off to a pretty quick start, judging by the crowd at the building on Monday of this week. We've also got in this week's paper, I was on the phone quite a bit yesterday with our high school principal and superintendent. It's even more amazing that I was on the phone yesterday and we got this in the paper today, but here is the graduation issue. And as I was talking with Principal Wallace, we were like, there's a lot of coordination that we could have done better on this. And it's like, well, we've never had a graduation like this before, where it was students wore their cap and gown and were videoed over the last couple of weeks. They're presenting, they put a lot of effort, ETC's put a lot of effort into compiling a video that will be out on May 29th, I believe. Don't quote me on that. It's in the section, you can see it. But so it was like, well, when do we release? And the issue, I was talking to the principal, and he was very cooperative.
I think we may have lost the audio, Dan, if you can hear us.
I can hear you. Can you?
Yeah, okay, there you are. You're back.
Okay. I'm not sure what happened. I'm new to this. But anyway, so I don't know when I cut off, but we've got the graduation section in this week's paper, and it's a lot of good information. The kids will at least be some kind of keepsake. It's some way to permanently note that these kids were here, and it's something physical they can take back with them and show to people, and show they graduated. One of the other more interesting stories, and I know it's interesting because when I told somebody one part of it, they looked like I'd hit them with in the stomach, is our main story this week. Will 2020 be the year with no big events here? As up top, obviously Memorial Day is maybe not one of our bigger events in the county, but it is definitely canceled coming up this weekend. There's no ceremony. There was just no way to have it. And the Lions, I feel really bad for them. They have already canceled all the July 4th celebration events. They said there was just no way they could put it on. They said there were questions on the fireworks, but they used the raffles and the fair and the other events to fund the fireworks. So without the other events, there was no way they would fund the yearly fireworks program. So that's disappointing. Going out a little further, with Donnie Craig, our Jeep Fest, Sheriff's Jeep Fest founder, we listed that one as unlikely. And that's the one that I know caught a lot of people by surprise. That you're like, well, it's a big outdoor event. It is, but that is one of the events in the county, probably the biggest as far as drawing people from all over the nation. If it were a traditional Jeep Fest year, we would have seen people from Ohio, possibly New York. There's usually a lot of Florida people. Like I said, there's always a group that comes down from Ohio, from all over other areas of the state. And I know the sheriff just said, it's a risky event. It's not completely set in stone that it was canceled at all. Still looking at it, but it was going to be a tough one to put on. The other ones like Marble Festival, Heritage Days, and Tape Day are all Marble Festival and Heritage Days. Both said and Tape Day, so they would make an announcement in July because they realized that so many events are all linked together. When you start, it's almost like over the history, we built up this pyramid, or like one of those Jenga things of this festival's here, this festival here, this group helps with this festival and turns around and helps with this. And when you pull one out, it makes it awfully hard to stick it back in. We've one of our biggest challenges, and I know we've got Cassie Rask on the line, is filling up the sports page during this time when there's no high school sports. So as I told her when she sent some stuff, that Boys and Girls Club, you're our main sports news for this week because you just want anything. There was no other sports to put out there other than some columns and other events on hunting and fishing. So I appreciate you sending that, and it made a good spread. It's at least young people being active, which is close to sports. And that is really everything that I had prepared. I can go in just a little bit. We still are publishing more or less on the same schedule, doing the same delivery, same in the stores at the same time. We've been pretty consistent. Sales, I was really encouraged, especially during the first couple of weeks of the pandemic. Sales have been really strong. I think I took it as a real vote of confidence that when times are bad, people want an honest to goodness newspaper put out by reporters to get their information on what has happened. So I felt good about that. It's made me feel good. We've seen a huge spike in search and subscriptions. We haven't seen quite the spike in advertising, but I understand that it's awfully hard to, to run ads from your doors closed and you're only operating on limited hours. Well, actually, that was all I had. So any questions on anything specific, I'm always willing to give my 2 cents worth.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time to unmute and ask Dan any questions you might have. What a great opportunity. Thank you, Dan.
Dan, let me just ask you, tell us a little bit about the e-edition and about subscription there. And then the other thing is tell us a little bit about your philosophy as being the editor for the Progress and how you go about disseminating the news and writing your editorials. Give us some of your personal traits and commitments of how you do the job. Please, sir.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, the first one's pretty easy. I think our e-edition is a great resource. I am obviously kind of old school. I like reading a paper copy of the paper, but where I think the e-edition is a great add-on is we began the e-edition in October of 2011. Every edition of the paper since that point is available to any subscriber. It's all searchable. You can flip back by date. You can search by keywords. It's a perfect chance to go back if you're like, man, I remember they had this story a couple of months ago about something. Go back, find it. It looks exactly the same. It works off of a flip viewer system. It's really a good way to research, to go back and look at stuff. I know one of the candidates running for one of the offices, I won't say which one, told me he was impressed that he had spent about 30 hours with our e-edition over the previous week when I talked to him, and he said it was a great way to build timelines to show exactly what has happened. On part two, Max, you're giving me too much credit. I'm not that organized to have an organized philosophy. A few things we try to do, I'd always try to do, and figuring out what news goes where, is keep it local. The more local is always better. We try to, I really view my role as someone who tries to run a fair platform, but I try to never exclude anybody's point of view just because I happen to not agree with it. If that were the case, and I always like to use this as an example to show how we're all fallible, I sat there and told Don Russell many years ago, I don't think that thrift store idea is going to work out too well. And I will own up to that. I mean, but to the credit, and that was my personal opinion. We gave Don everything he needed to get started, all the publicity. It was just, I try not to let my personal opinion really influence what I would pick or choose. I try to look at some of the basic things you'd hear in any journalism class. Keep it local. The most people who will be affected by the story, and then there are some that you just know that they just touch you on an emotional basis, so you move those up. Right now, one of our challenges with the news is, as I referenced earlier, particularly with sports, but also with anything, with so much shut down and so little going on, I could almost see, like, the first couple of weeks, people were really hungry for COVID news, for pandemic news. But I can see that is definitely dwindling. I can just tell by the stories that we put online. A lot of times I use those as a tracker to see what people are reading, what people are reading and sharing and passing along. And I can tell that an average COVID story has lost a lot of ooh, I got to read that right now. Let me click that button. And it's going back to more of the regular news. So hopefully that answered that question somewhat. Anyone else?
I have one. If
Okay.
we don't have Jeep Fest, does that mean the Sheriff's Foundation Auxiliary and stuff won't be able to give out their scholarships or grants for 2020?
I would refer you to the sheriff on that one, but I can tell you that is where I was about to say 99, but it's probably more like 100% of the funds that I am on the Sheriff's Foundation Committee board. And I can tell you that that is where 99.5% of our funding comes from is Jeep Fest. So yes, that will be a humongous impact, as well as the nonprofits who use the Jeep Fest to make additional money by helping out in other ways. So it's not set in stone that it's not going to happen, but it's looking doubtful. And there's some challenges they've got to go past. But I would definitely refer you to the sheriff for firsthand on anything firm on either of those questions.
Okay,
We
thanks.
termed it unlikely, since that's as far as I think they're going at this point.
Dan, this is Carl. You had an incident at the paper with an obituary a few years ago that changed your policy on obituary.
Yeah, Carl, I only caught part of that, but I know where you were going with the question, so I can answer. And this was, I want to say it was 15 years ago, thereabouts. It was been a long time. Running an obituary that someone brought in from the street. It's like, oh, this is a relative of mine that died. Here's the obituary. It had plenty of personal information. It was written like a straight up obituary. There was nothing to give us any indication that it would be fraudulent. And how would you run a fraudulent obituary? But we run it, and lo and behold, man calls, and then he did not use the mark claim because he was not in a good mood and he wasn't joking around. He did not say the reports of my death are greatly exaggerated, but they were. We had to run a correction. We ran a story on the front page. It was not against the law. I still remember that our chief deputy at the time, I remember quoting him. He's like, there's no law against lying to a newspaper. It's maybe not ethical to submit a false obituary for somebody, but that did happen. And the man whose false obituary ran, we ran his real obituary, and I'm not had any correction, so it was a real obituary a couple of weeks back. So he goes down in history as the only man to have two obituaries in the Pickens Progress. Oh, and the change in policy is now we require a drive. It's kind of an awkward thing. Somebody brings in their dead relative's obituary, and you're like, oh, I need to see your driver's license before we take it. And then we usually explain why we want to see their driver's license before we take it. And we make a photocopy of it and leave it with it. We don't do that with funeral homes. But if it's going off the street, that is now the new policy.
That's the type of story you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
So anyone else have any questions for Dan at this time?
You can't make that stuff up.
Can't make that stuff. Oh, I've never heard that before. So
Dan, have you got any
questions?
Dan, have you got any particular insights into how businesses in the community are faring?
I don't, and this is I've made this statement a couple of times, and I want to make sure I'm clear because this would be so open to misinterpretation. Now, I'm certainly not wishing anyone bad, but I feel like since Dr. McCurdy was just on the line, it's like when you go to the doctor and you have a test done. Even if you think it might be bad, it's like, just give me the results. And I'm we obviously see the state news that the economy's just wrecked, it's devastated. I'm guessing locally people are getting by on their PPE money, their stimulus funds. We haven't seen any businesses close. I know they've got to be hurting, but it's almost like I don't want it to speed up whatever negative effects are coming, but like right now I don't see anything. I want to know what is going to happen. with this. But no, I don't have any insight other than it seems like we might either things are not as dire as predicted, which would be great news, or we're in sort of a lull before the real damage is done. And I hope I've made that clear that I'm not wishing it to happen. It's hard to gauge it right now, and I feel like we're sort of waiting for test results to come back to see how bad it is.
Any further questions? You're not going to have Dan in front of you again for a little while, so don't be bashful. This is the time to talk to him.
Hey, Dan, this is Sue Appleton. How are you?
Hey, good, Sue. How are you doing? Thanks for the Optimist Club for your ad in the paper this week.
That's right. You do a great job for all us civic organizations. Thank you so much. I'm curious about editorials. The second page, upper left-hand corner.
Mm-hmm.
Who writes those? It's various members of the staff, isn't it? Sometimes it's you.
We do. What we do, and this is a common policy among all newspapers, if we usually have an editorial meeting, like really we'll probably be having one tomorrow morning to start looking at next week, and we'll start looking at some topics and seeing what's on different people's minds. And not everybody who chimes in at the editorial board are the writers. You know, everybody that works at the paper, and a lot of times we're just bringing like, hey, I heard this comment. So we start from there, and sometimes the subject is just better to go at first person. If you want to relate a personal story, we leave it. If it's well, my wife had one recently talking about gardening and what a great relaxation it is during this time. If it's more where we want to commend the city of Jasper for something that doesn't require a personal, it's usually staff written, and we all sort of work on it. The journalism term for the main editorial that does not have a signature on it is called a masthead. It's considered written by everybody at the paper. So usually if it lends itself to where there's first person direct information, we go with the name. It's just more institutional, we'll go with the masthead.
Thank you. That helps. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Dan, this is Carl again. I noticed that you run about the same number of letters to the editor every week. How many letters do you get? Do you cull some out? Do you choose them, or just run everything? And how do you choose?
Like the New York Times has got their motto, all the news that's fit to print. I go with all the news that fits, with all the letters that fit. We do call them out. Generally, the ones that get called are the ones that are just repetitive. Whether you're pro or con, I mean, we run some Trump, both pro and con letters, but nobody wants to read a whole page of them. I'd rather read the local stuff. The local stuff's always more interesting, so that always takes priority. But we are going to try to fill up the page with them, and sometimes we run more of, and I use the term generic. I know the people who write them think that they are definitely not generic, and it's very important that their view of Washington is out there, and sometimes there are very good points on our national politics, but I don't think we need a whole page of those. So local first, then whatever we need to fill up the page. Usually it's the ones that I consider sort of generic to get called. But I try there again, I try to not let my personal opinion. The only time we really make, and we don't edit them, they either run as they were sent or they don't run. We don't go in and tinker with anybody's wording. Like there's one, for example, this week where someone talked about our elected school superintendent and how he was let go. We just stuck an editor's note at the bottom because I don't want to spread misinformation that he actually was not an elected superintendent. He was appointed by the school board. And that's just because there's just no reason to, it's a minor correction. The letter's still all the points for ballot. I just don't want to, spread that, that was obviously incorrect.
Okay, any other questions?
Dan, this is Judy Harvey. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. You made a brief reference in the beginning to your revenues and advertising and subscriptions and so forth. With so many businesses closed down and the advertising being off, is the paper at risk at all?
We would, here again, I don't want anybody, I know a lot of people have really suffered. I don't want to say, well, I was lucky this happened, but as far as the newspapers go, if we could have picked a time that was just an economic chaos right in the middle of a heated local election, has propped us up very nicely. The political ads came in right when we needed them. It could have been, if we'd been in normal circumstances, this could have been heading into one of our best years since the glory days of newspapers back in the 90s, early 2000s. As it is, we're okay, because if it were not for the political advertising, we would still be okay as far as we would still get a paper out. But, it would be getting tougher. It would be, if we were not in the middle of where I had the political ads to make it up for it, we'd still do something. I just would like to point out on that, we had a business, and I don't want to make fun of them, because they obviously just did not know how newspaper works, but it was a smaller local business, and called like in the first week, and they were like, hey, you need to support local businesses. Why don't you give away free ads in the Progress? And I'm like, what part of us being a local business too are you not following? So I was pointing, and I pointed out, I've heard one other person make a reference that it was to an ad that was in the Progress, and this person who didn't like the ad, it was a political one, said instead of them spending their money with the Progress, they should spend it with local businesses. I'm like, we are on Main Street. Every person lives in Pickens County. We are absolutely as local as you can get, and shopping local also means advertising local.
Wow.
It does.
Dan, this is Margaret DeFrancisco. Just a quick comment, and I'm not sure if it was received in the light in which it was intended, but the Cherokee closeout, the full page ad they had with the spare toilet paper was just so wonderfully funny. And it came at a really critical time where you're thinking, what are we going to do here? So I'm not sure if your folks had the layout of that and the creativity, but it was wonderful.
It is great to have an own.
Did we lose him?
Yeah, I'm not hearing him.
Okay.
There he is.
Oh, I can get cut off. Oh, I was just, if you missed it, we work very closely with the owner of Cherokee Closeouts. He's a great guy to work with. He's always open for something like that.
We liked it. Okay, anyone else? If not, I want to thank you so much, Dan, for coming in front of Rotary today in this different format, but seems to work really well for us. And Margaret has a beautiful dog, I swear. That is absolutely beautiful.
Dan,
Dan.
once this is over, Dan, we'll invite you to come meet with us in person and give us a retrospective on the history of this.
Oh,
that would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, and before we close, I want to thank Josh Tippins for facilitating this for us. He always does such a good job. And Josh, if you have an update on your goal, did we get you over the top?
Yeah, so thank you, Steve. Sue was giving us a goal, $900. I kind of set myself a stretch goal to get to at least $2,000, and as of right now, I'm about $150 shy of getting to that. So
2,000.
So I'm pushing. I got about $150 to go, and I think I'll hit that by Tuesday. So thank y'all all very much for your support.
Woohoo!
That is awesome. That is awesome. Okay, so
we do have a new picture for Speedy. Josh Speedy Gonzalez Tippins.
Speedy, yeah.
Yeah, he's what we hear is that if he doesn't meet his goal, he may head south of the border. So he may be on the run. If you see this guy on the run heading south, he's now being called Josh Speedy Gonzalez.
Josh Speedy, I like that.
I'll be running.
Does anyone else have any announcements?
Sue, do you have enough people for next Tuesday? Do you need anything for next Tuesday that any of us can help you with?
Thanks, Margaret. We have a great team of people who've helped us from the past that are from the club. We have Judge Jeff Downing. We have our 2 lawyers, Kay Lawrence and Steve Moranos. We have a number of other volunteers from the group as jailers and so forth. So I do have all my volunteer positions with people, but we like to have people there to cheer on. So we would love to have all of you come as spectators and cheer as they are brought in their cuffs.
Great, thank you. Now, any other announcements from anyone as far as anything that's coming up in the community that we need to discuss?
I have one. Boys and Girls Club, we have our clay shoot coming up, and this sounds crazy, but it is our first event for 2020 because everything was either postponed or canceled. So it is on June the 5th, and I only have 2 teams available left to shoot. So if anyone knows of anyone or is interested in shooting, I have to give my final answers by the end of next week. So just let me know. And then we still have our Give 365 program going on.
Thank you, Cassie.
Thanks.
And I would be remiss if I did not recognize that we have our economic county economic director, Green Suttles, is with us today, and I want to do a great shout out to him. I appreciate him being on board with us.
Thank you.
So if there's no other announcements, then Josh, if you will, would you put up our 4-way test?
Before we go, Steve, did you want to talk about the results of your poll about the transition event?
I was going to let Gina tell me about that because she was taking.
Oh, got it. Okay.
But I can tell you this: it's solidly for 12 o'clock instead of 6.
Yes.
I think we had at least 1 vote for 6 o'clock, but there were a lot more votes for noon.
For noon, yes. Yeah,
Gina, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so at this point, I think we'll be changing that to 12. Which was my original idea anyway, but I allowed myself to be influenced by others always. So, Josh, if you will, please, our 4-way test. Of the things we think, say, and do. Is
it
fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial
to all concerned?
Thank you so much for attending. I gratefully appreciate it. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Have a good week, everybody.